Welcome to The Business Strategist, the show for CEOs and founders ready to scale fast, lead smarter, and build a business that doesn't rely on them. I'm Adam Strong, award-winning strategist, former elite athlete, international speaker, and 3 times best-selling author. After 3 decades in business, I know exactly what it takes to grow, scale, and exit with impact. Each week, I dive into real conversations with industry experts, bold entrepreneurs, and clients navigating the uphill struggles of business, giving you the tools and the strategies to create more profit, more freedom, and more impact. Let's get into it.
Why do growing businesses love working in Slack? Let's ask Christy at Ari Bikes.
Running things in Slack saves me so much time.
AI summaries save 97 minutes per week. What say you, Rox from Gosney?
Slack helps us build community, it helps us build connection.
Your partners, vendors and customers all in one place. Take us on home, Ashley from Caraway.
If we didn't have Slack tomorrow, I would explode.
Well, let's not let that happen. Visit slack.com/podcast to get 50% off Slack Business Plus.
It doesn't matter if you're listening to this on a Monday morning in January or 5 a.m. on a Tuesday in the middle of the summer. Now, if you're a founder, you're likely to be obsessed with one thing. What is the next milestone? You're either grinding, try to find that first million in growth, you're architecting systems to scale, or you're finally making the effort to clean up your financials for that exit. Now, we have dashboards for literally everything, LTV, churn rate, EBITDA, whatever it might be. We treat our companies like high-performance machines. But there's a massive irony in entrepreneurship that I see all the time. The more successful the business gets, the more the founder tends to decay. We treat our bodies like a cost center where we can deal with it after whatever the next big win is, whether it be exiting your business, whether it be hitting the next milestone, whatever it might be. But my guest today is Dr. Amy Loden-Tiffany. Now, she argues that most of us actually run our lives like a distressed asset. She's a triple board certified physician who works with the top 1% out there. And she sees the engine lights that most doctors completely miss. Now, Amy, I want to jump straight in. Now, you've seen the data that most CEOs ignore. They sit in an executive chair for, best part of 10 hours a day. And the question is, if you're a founder that's currently scaling a business but bankrupting their metabolic health, have they actually succeeded, or are they just spending the best years of their life building a bank account and they literally are too sick to ever enjoy it at the end of it? What's your thoughts?
Oh, I see it all the time. And thanks for having me on your show, Adam. I think this is such an important topic that is so misunderstood. And you're exactly right. People think I'll do it later. Because if I'm not having the pain point today, why should I do something different today? And I love your example of the CEO who sits in the chair all day. I mean, they might as well start smoking. Sitting that long, that prolonged inactivity is worse than smoking for their health. So why are we okay with mediocrity in our health? And we demand excellence in our business? It doesn't make sense.
No, it's completely contradictory. And I guess in the patients that come to you, I guess they fit that same criteria. Do you see that on a daily basis in practice?
I do. And many times people may even have an inkling that something's wrong. And they may even realize that it's because they haven't prioritized their health because they've been prioritizing their business. Yeah. But what they often don't realize is how many subtle signs their body has been sending them, sometimes for decades, sometimes just a few months. Something's wrong. And they've got very good at ignoring what the body is telling them. And it's coming at the expense of their long-term health. And to your point, you build this huge system, this kingdom, if you will, and then you die early and you can't enjoy it. You can't spend the time with your family, your friends. You can't do the things you want to do. How does that make sense? Like, why are we working ourselves to death?
I'm a big believer of working in sprints, because I think that a lot of people, especially with some of our listeners, Amy, is that they forget, and then they forget to kind of step back and reflect and say, why am I actually doing this in the first place? Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Yes. What's interesting too about this is I speak from lived experience. I created a company out of scratch. I know what these founders are doing. And when they come into my office and we're having these conversations and I'm telling them, literally, your engine lights are on, there's this sense that, well, I'll do something later when this next big project at work is over. And the truth is there's always going to be a next big project. I had to learn this personally when I literally worked myself into a hospital bed. And so I can tell people straight and directly, this isn't just me being your doctor and telling you that you have a problem. This is me also being your advocate and your friend and telling you, is this the future you want? Because what you're doing is getting you one outcome. And is that the outcome you want to create? In our businesses, if we're not getting the outcome we want, what do? We change, right? Same thing in our health. If we don't have outcomes and results that we want in our health, we have to change.
What are some of the warning signs that you often see or you often kind of advise to patients before burnout and disease show up?
Absolutely. Energy level is really important, and paying attention to your energy level. There are things people could come to me and they'll tell me, I don't know what's wrong. I just sense that something's wrong. My energy's off, or my concentration is different than it used to be, or I'm eating the same way, but the weight's coming on. Something's different, right? So there's the group of signs that patients themselves identify. And then there's the laboratory studies that I can identify and I can find and see, well, you're really inflamed. There's evidence that your insulin is too high. So what is your diet doing? Rarely, we'll even find cortisol, stress hormone, being super high. And then you have to ask the question, like, what are we going to do about these things? Because they all have implications, and our bodies are brilliantly designed in such a way that they try and try and try to fix the problem. And they will do that. Your body will do that until it can't. And then when it can't, you have to intervene. And by that time, this has been going on often too long. And the recovery time takes much longer because now you have to undo often years of damage.
If you follow me on LinkedIn, then you'll know exactly what I'm about to share with you. But recently, Amy, I posted up on LinkedIn about the fact that 2025 was an extremely challenging year. And it's not just me, by the way. There has been a lot of people out there that have felt exactly the same thing. And I kind of resonate with what you're saying in terms of the energy levels.
Yes, energy for sure. The second thing I would tell you to look for is how well are you sleeping? When you wake, are you well rested? Do you have a headache? Do you feel like you need another 5 hours of sleep? Are you the person who, for example, can go to sleep fine, but then you're waking up between 2 and 4 in the morning and the ticker tape won't shut off? I often find, especially with my founders and entrepreneurs, that by nature, these are ambitious, driven people who are willing to take risk. And by nature, they're going to have, even if I can't measure it on a test, they're going to have a propensity toward a high adrenaline state. And so what I will often notice is this person will tell me, I'm not sleeping well. And we start tracking, what days are you not sleeping well? Is it before or after a big event, a big meeting, a big presentation? Because often they've geared up that adrenaline, and that adrenaline's still in their body. And so then after they've rested a little bit, that adrenaline in their body says, hi, brain, wake up, let's talk. And you can't go back to sleep. And then you're mad because you can't go back to sleep, right? And so it starts this horrible cycle, and you're slamming back the coffee in the morning or whatever your pick-me-up is, right? And then you're getting stuff done. But then by the end of the day, you're dragging again, and the whole cycle keeps repeating. So I see that frequently. I ask people frequently, not just how long are you sleeping, but how well are you sleeping? Because if you're not getting that quality sleep, huge difference. It does make an impact metabolically, but you said earlier, and I loved how you put this, you put burnout and metabolic health together. And I think what most people don't realize is they are connected. The same things that cause burnout, my lack of good sleep, my lack of stress reduction, my lack of good healthy eating, my lack of movement, all of those are the same things that cause metabolic problems, be it insulin resistance all the way to diabetes, dementia, heart disease, cancer. They're all connected. So when we stop seeing these as two different problems and start realizing we're dealing with the same problem, we get forward a lot faster and our momentum can leverage more quickly.
Can you give us a little bit of a rundown of what metabolic health is and how important is it to us?
Absolutely. The way I think about metabolic health is it's how do the cells use energy at a micro level. At a macro level, it's what's showing up in organs and systems. And so you think about kidney disease, liver disease, heart disease, brain disease, be it stroke or dementia, whatnot. So how the cells are operating affects how the big picture, the systems operate in the organ systems. And so when I use the term metabolic health, I'm really speaking at a general level of cellular health that affects all those systems, not to be confused with the medical diagnosis of metabolic syndrome.
Yes.
Everything I just described is mostly part of that, but there's an actual diagnosis in which it's a compilation of diseases. So it's abnormal insulin, abnormal cholesterol, abnormal BMI or abdominal obesity, and then abnormal blood pressure. The key is we can make little silos, but the big picture is they're related. And so if they're all related, what's the root cause of this dysfunction metabolically within the cell? And how do I fix it so that I'm not fatigued, so that I'm processing stress well, so that I'm able to live to my highest capacity and productivity in my personal and professional life? So that's how I think of it anyway. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad we got that cleared up, because again, I think you made a really valid point. Metabolic health is different from metabolic syndrome. Well, certainly I've experienced, and I reckon there's a lot of listeners that have experienced things like brain fog or decision fatigue. And you rightly pointed out, like, we'll generally use tea, coffee, or an energy drink just to give us like a bit of a kickstart.
Or sugar.
Anything that's going to give you that sugar kick. Exactly. So how does, again, kind of poor metabolic health and insulin resistant, does it lower founders' IQ in any particular way? And how does it has a knock-on effect to people's ability to make strategic decisions on a day-to-day basis?
So it absolutely makes a difference in how well you think. Your mind, you use the term brain fog. That is a term I hear frequently. Your mind becomes more clear when it's not just well rested, but when it's well fueled and cleaned out, right, from all the things. And your body will do that if you give it the right support. But where I think about, you use the term IQ, it's to my knowledge, it doesn't change your IQ at all. That's a level that you have, right? But it impacts your ability to make good decisions quickly and correctly. And I think that people don't realize that. I don't get the sense that they realize when I'm in fight or flight, either one, and that adrenaline is flooding my system. And I'm, for example, trying to get all these notes done before the end of the year, because at the end of the year, billing stops, right? There's a certain amount of quality that suffers in that produced product. And that doesn't matter if you're a low on the totem pole or the CEO, you're going to have that impact. But it's so important if you're the primary decision maker for your company and you're trying to make strategy and tactical changes, you have to think clearly.
Yeah.
You would never come to work drunk, I hope. So why would you come to work not in your best mental capacity from a metabolic perspective?
I think you make a really valid point, actually. You talked about stress hormones. What are again, I know we've spoken a little bit about warning signs, but obviously exercise is a great antidote for reducing stress. But then some forms of exercise are actually counteractive, because if you do too much cardiovascular, it actually increases cortisol, right? So from your perspective, what do you advise your patients with regards to reducing stress levels, specifically cortisol and adrenaline?
So when I think about the stress hormones, I also like to think about what is our body biologically primed to do? Why do we have those stress hormones, right? Let's just go back 1,000 years ago. If we have these stressful events because the whatever wild animal is chasing us instead of us chasing it,
right?
We need that stress hormone. That's a one-time event in that day, I hope, for my ancestors. In our world today, it's an every minute thing. So we're not just getting micro bursts of stress hormones. They're up and they stay up all day long. And that is a different impact on our body. Our body wasn't created to deal with that. And so then you start to say, well, when that goes up, how do I respond? My blood vessels constrict. I don't digest as well. My muscles are more tight. I start to have neck pain and headaches because I've been either sitting or standing all day at the same place. I'm not moving. I'm not doing the things my ancestors did. And and I would in no way want to live as they did 1,000 years ago, right? Please do not hear what I'm not saying. But we need to honor what our biology today is, because it came from them. And they are the ones that pass those genes forward. So to ignore how our genetics and our biology is foolish. It's a terrible investment for our business.
I think what from what I've picked up from our conversation is that stress over long periods of time is just simply not sustainable. Now, I want to kind of backtrack a little bit, because I remember at the very beginning of our conversation, we talked a little bit about sitting down for long periods of time. Now, most of us wouldn't be in a board meet lighting up a cigarette in front of everybody. Like, it's just not good etiquette, number one. But then I guess, why would we sit down for 6, 8, 10 hours a day? Walk us through the science part, the physiological part. How does the act of building a business at a desk literally why is it most dangerous than smoking? Tell us a little bit about that. What's the science say around that? What's the data? What have you looked into?
So there is good data that inactivity will kill you. We know that. Why your muscles get weaker, you're more prone to infections, you're going to have more impulsivity toward eating sugary foods, the greasy things, the good stuff, if you will. And what happens, the truth is most of us can't change our schedules. And so I don't want to come at this from a perspective of I'm going to tell you all the good habits and you're going to go do them, because that's nonsense. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But what I have noticed for my patients is a lot of people will have a standing desk, but they don't stand at it, right? They have all the tech and they don't use it. The execution of what we're trying to do in our health habits isn't happening. And so it's not that people don't know. I think people are very adept and well educated, especially my founders and entrepreneurs, about what they should do. It's just how do you do it? And so when I think about our clients, one of the things that we implement is, all right, I don't care that you don't go to the gym every day. I'm not going to ever ask you to go to the gym every day. I'm going to say, how are we going to meet our health goals in the context of your business and your life? And many of my patients, I had a lady yesterday I was talking to, she, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. all day long. That is meeting after meeting after meeting. And I was like, you know what? Can we take 10 minutes twice a day? 10 minutes where you walk around in your business suit, but you're up and moving and you just walk around your office. Can we do that? Can we walk in place while you're watching some 10-minute jokester on whatever your favorite comedy channel is, right? Like pick whatever you will do, 10 minutes. And it needs to be after eating. It needs to be something that engages your thigh muscles, and go do it. You do not have to get sloppy, sweaty, gross when you're in the middle of your business day. But 10 minutes twice a day, every day of the week, becomes a massive investment in long-term health for your musculoskeletal system, your cardiovascular system, your endocrine. It's a win. I can't go to the gym for an hour a day either. I own a business. I run a medical clinic and I have 5 kids. Telling me to go to the gym is the most ridiculous, frankly, asinine thing that could be told to me, right? It's not going to happen. But I can do 2 10-minute walking sessions after I eat. I'm going to eat. Even if my food isn't perfect, I can go for a 10-minute walk.
True.
And that minor change has radically implemented massive changes in labs and in energy and in outcomes in their businesses for the people who are our clients who do it.
I think you make a really valid point there. And I love the fact that this conversation is so real because of your current situation. And you're a founder yourself. You've got your 5 kids, your army of kids.
All under 12, by the way.
Which is crazy. Hats off to you. You're like Superwoman.
No, I'm just trying to keep the pieces together, just like everybody else, right? All I've done is I've come a little further on the health side, right? I'm just a little further on my journey there.
Yeah. The valid point is that most people are very educated. They know what is right and what is wrong. It's all about choices.
Yeah.
That's kind of my belief system is it's about, we've all got choices, but then we then need to understand what are the consequences of inaction and what are the consequences. It's kind of like chicken and egg situation. But this or but this, rather than kind of coming up with, and we're recording this in January. And one of the things that is really big in January is people's New Year's resolutions and the fact that people go mad because of their guilty pleasures of Christmas, which to me makes no logical sense because, hey, if you're going to do something, fucking do it, right? You don't need to wait till January the 1st of every year to make a change. Like to me, it makes no logical sense, right? I mean, is it me or am I just speaking nonsense?
No, I think you're right. In fact, as a company, one of the things we did is we said, we're not going to do anything for January 1st. We're going to do the January 10th. We're going to give you 10 days, realize that you can't do it on your own, and then let's help, right? And so I like what you're saying because I think people need to know that they're heard, that we know they're super busy, that we know they're not going to stop working and doing what they're doing, but that they can choose who to partner with. And what's frustrating is the simplest things to do are the simplest things not to do. And when you start to think about, why am I not doing the simple? You're actually getting a benefit for not doing it. Hear me. Not doing it in the moment is giving you a benefit, and recognizing that I'm choosing my immediate benefit, my immediate dopamine satisfaction instead of my long game and satisfaction is a very helpful tool to help people start saying, is this really the outcome I want. One of the things we do in our work is we help people understand what their lifespan is and their health span. The insurance companies, life insurance companies, are great at predicting people's lifespans. So I take that information, which is, by the way, built on your habits, and it can make a 20-year difference in good habits or bad habits.
Wow.
And I take that information for each patient. I'm like, all right, what's your lifespan? You're going to live to 92. I told this lady this morning, this is what this says. I don't know if you're going to. I'm not God, but the life insurance companies think they're God, and they think that you're going to live till you're 92. So my question is, at 91, what does that look like? Are you in a wheelchair in a nursing home? Or are you hiking across Europe with all of your friends and your family and going on trips and riding your horses and still, doing the things that are important to you? Because at the end of the day, no one knows how long we're going to live. But the
True.
quality of our life, when I start listening to what people say, the quality of their life matters. They don't want to be dependent on people. They don't want to have dementia. They want to be valued and heard and loved by the people that matter to them at the end of our careers. It's not our businesses that will be holding our hands. It's the people that will be holding our hands on our deathbeds. And so how do you create and frame a life that gives you that outcome you want decades before? And it has to be decades before. You cannot start this at 75.
You're ready to exit, so why haven't you? You may be in business for 15, 20, 25 years of building your business, but the passion is gone. You're done. But one question keeps you stuck. Is the number close enough to walk away without any regret? What can you actually spend? What kind of life does it fund? And will you look back in 5 years wishing you'd stayed in your business? Now, our sponsor, Zentum, works exclusively with founders at this exact moment. They're chartered financial planners who show you exactly what exit really means. Your spending power, your options, even income that you can generate outside the business. They give you the clarity to pull the trigger with confidence or a plan to bridge the gap. Visit zentum.co.uk and find out if it's finally time. That's zentum.co.uk and find out if it's finally time. Hey guys, me again. And I just want to remind you about the Exit Readiness Assessment, the most amazing tool for CEOs and founders that are looking to build a self-managing company. This will help you to identify what's blocking you from helping you to step out your business operations and effectively scale up and eventually exit over the next 12 to 36 months. It gives you a personalized report and you can complete it in less than 4 minutes. All you have to do is head over to readytoexit.scoreapp.com. That's readytoexit.scoreapp.com to get your personalized score. Enjoy. I think that from my perspective, I speak in terms of like the entrepreneurial community, is that there is an element of I know it and arrogance. Like most founders think that they're healthy, but in reality, they aren't really that healthy. Whatever healthy is to them, obviously.
Right.
Where do you see the biggest blind spots for them? What are they not seeing that you're seeing?
So the blind spot is they don't realize that their doctors are not testing for the things that can make an impact. And they're not testing because evidence-based medicine hasn't proven that it's helpful. However, it hasn't proven harm either. And they're not testing because there's a cost to a test, right? If a financial cost, there is a outcome cost. What if you do a test and you get a result you don't want? You got to follow that up. You need to know what you're going to do with that next step. So, for example, years ago, GGT is an enzyme that your liver and biliary system make. And I noticed when I was in my 20s, my life insurance company had checked that. My doctor never had. I was like, why the heck is life insurance checking this? So I started researching it, and it turns out that an elevated GGT marker is predictive of early mortality. The life insurance company knows that. That's why they're testing it. They want to know if I'm high risk. Wow. So I was like, what the heck? This is a cheap test. I called the labs, like, how much does this cost? It's a few dollars. Great. Let's start checking in on everybody. And I can't tell you how many times I found evidence that somebody, they feel okay. They're just in there for their annual, but no one's checked that and no one's telling them this is a hidden sign. Same thing with estimated GFR. That is a very imperfect test. So hear me and don't hang up your hat. My GFR is this, then I have to do that. But it is a marker of and an estimation of kidney health. The kidneys are a detox organ with the liver. If the kidneys go down, that's bad news bears, right? Yeah. We have to have good systems to filter all the toxins out. And that is an easy test. It's almost always included in annuals. And I never was taught in medical school or residency, and even as an early attending physician, to use that data in a way that predicts longevity. And now we test it just like we always have, but I'm explaining to patients, hey, you have early kidney disease. What are the 3 things that are going to screw your kidneys? It's going to be hydration, glucose, and blood pressure. Let's get those under control. And many times those early things, they've been there all along, but no one's noticing them. So the blind spot to your question is that people are trusting that their doctors are looking for all the things, but their doctors haven't even been trained to look for the things. And we're not talking about running massive executive health exams here. We're talking about very basic, just blood laboratory testing. A fasting insulin is a really easy tool to know what's going on in my metabolic health. Also, dollars. Never was taught to check that. We started checking the high sensitivity C-reactive protein years ago when some studies came out and showed it was connected to cardiovascular health. Just this year, 2025, excuse me, but within the last 30 days, an article finally came out making that the official recommendation from some of the big heart societies in our country.
Wow.
I've been doing it for years. They're
That's
just
crazy.
now telling people, right? Like, so not applying the science and waiting for all these big organizations to say what is good medicine, I reject. I didn't go to medical school to just do what other people tell me to do. I went to medical school to provide good care for my patients. And that means using the data we have and not making really silly rules about the data we don't have.
You know, one thing that I've observed, and obviously, again, depending on where you're listening with it within the world, because I know that in Europe, we have a slightly different health system. In the US, it's very much privatized, and each country has their own kind of health system. From my perspective, is that I feel like if I have something wrong with my health, generally most people would go to their doctors, right? And and most doctors, when they went to medical school, they'll be trained in pharmaceutical medicine, not in alternative health. And what's really interesting about our conversation is that you're very much building a practice, which is very much looking at alternative health. Or is it alternative health? Or is it kind of looking at as, do you know what I mean? That's kind of my thoughts here.
It's an interesting question because I think a lot of people do say, well, if you're not doing what everyone else is doing, you must be alternative. What I'm doing is I'm taking the traditional things and I'm amplifying them. And I'm taking the things that would be an alternative and saying, is there merit here? Is there value? Is there evidence of harm? Because there's a lot of things I don't have studies on that say, yeah, you should absolutely do it. Well, why would we? There's no money in that study. For example, who in your audience would volunteer to jump out of a plane at 10,000 feet without a parachute? No one will, right? Because it's stupid. It is not good, logical things because we know bad things happen. But in medicine, there's this idea, if we don't have a study to prove it, then it's equally bad. And sometimes you have to know, well, I'm not going to do a study to see how many people can jump out of airplanes without parachutes and have bad things happen or not happen. I'm going to use my brain and say, if there's not evidence of harm and it might help, then I'm going to do the same thing I would do in my business. I'm going to test and measure. I'm going to try it, see how it goes, measure my results. If it doesn't work for my body, I stop it. So from that perspective, I would say supplements, for example, some are very helpful, but it's a very frustrating conversation when you try to have it with your doctor for number one, regardless of what country you're in, they're always in a hurry and they're always running behind and they're never hardly making eye contact. And if they do, you're not totally sure if they're not a little weird, right? And that's the reality of our doctors. And I say doctors loosely because at least in our country, we have advanced practice providers, nurse practitioners, and physician associates and so forth. It's anyone who's providing that interaction. What I've done is said, screw the system. Let's have longer visits. Let me get to know you. Let me understand what's important to you, what you value. And then I'm going to have a conversation about all the things because my job is similar to your financial advisor. They don't get to actually decide all the details for your finances, right? They tell you these are what we recommend. What do you want to do? I'm going to tell you, here's the facts, the alternative, the traditional, the we don't know, and you choose what you want to do. But you need to know all of the options to have an informed decision. And you cannot do that in a 10-minute office visit. So at least in the United States, we are awesome at trauma care and sick care and, putting out the fires. But we're not really that good about preventing the fire in the first place. And that's what I focus on.
I think you made a really valid point, and I think from my perspective, is that we need to be a bit more proactive in the way that we approach health. Well, certainly from my perspective, and I use the analogy of, every year we get our car serviced, right?
Right.
It's a classic, but it absolutely, and again, I'll be guilty as charged. Now, I will say to you, I haven't had a medical, should we say, a medical checkover for quite some time. it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not unhealthy, and it doesn't
Right.
necessarily mean that I don't have regular healthy habits. It just means that I am unaware of my benchmarks.
Yes.
And I think that from my perspective, again, it would be me saying, okay, well, I'm young, and I've got plenty of yes, but that would be me being completely and utterly stupid because, hey,
I would question the foolishness of it. I agree.
foolish. Absolutely. 100%. Absolutely. In terms of like, when we're thinking about from a health perspective, it's really interesting about this, Amy. I don't recall ever doing anything from a health perspective in speaking about this. So we often talk about strategy. We talk a little bit about the grind, but we've never spoken about health. And I thought to myself, why not? It's completely illogical. So it's really interesting. Talk to me a little bit about burnout. And I want to quickly share something really, really quickly with you. A good friend of mine posted on LinkedIn, and I think it was today actually. And he said in the post, and this was just prior to Christmas, he talked about burnout, and he said in the post specifically about the fact that he was burnt out over Christmas because he thought in his mind that he was just going to get one more tiny project completed before the Christmas break. But the problem is that he pushed it too hard and now he's suffering the consequences. Talk to me a little bit about burnout really, really quickly and what we need to look for and how to prevent it.
So burnout, moral injury, whatever spectrum you're on in that terminology, is about the lack of empathy, the lack of connection, the lack of purpose in your work and the meaning it gives you and the impact it brings to others. And when those things aren't happening because you're not functioning at your highest capacity, to me, that is the connection between burnout and metabolic health. Same drivers of disease in both. And I do think I'm going to call it a disease. It's not actually, but if it's causing physical, somatic, mental outcomes in my life, that's enough for me to call it a something, right?
Yeah.
And so even though it's not a diagnosable disease, I see it all the time. And sometimes I have to call it anxiety or depression to get people's coverage, their insurance to cover it. But at the end of the day, I don't know if it matters what we call it, if we can just understand what's the driving cause of it, right? And if the driving cause is I'm not taking care of the number one asset for my business, which is my health, then how dare I complain that I'm not getting the results I want? There is an opportunity cost to not taking care of yourself. I've lived it. I've seen it in my patients. I don't recommend it.
If he was one of your patients, by the way, and he was contemplating on, will I push for that last project? What advice would you give to him?
Yeah. So I look at life from the viewpoint of what will I regret the most? And I would ask him to consider, do you regret not doing the project because it gave you some dopamine high or some financial remuneration, some ego boost, or is there something else? Like what is the cost of not getting it done? And there's a reason you want to get it done. So really understanding the pros and cons of that. And then say, what is the cost to just saying, hey, it's going to be a 2026 thing? What's my cost to doing it that way? And what do I gain? Because there is always trade-offs. That's the basics of business, right? There's always going to be a trade-off for each decision we make. And so I look at it from a perspective of what will I regret less? Will I regret less not finishing the project, or will I regret less missing out on being with my loved ones? And each person actually can have a different answer to that. Some people really will say, I don't want to be with my loved ones. And if that's their value, I'm not going to criticize them for it. It's different than mine. But that's their choice, and I can honor that as long as they've made that choice. But I would ask him, be intentional. Look at the options of what it means to finish it and what does it mean to not finish it. And then pros and cons, and make an educated, unemotional decision.
That's a very interesting perspective you brought up there. So, and it's interesting in a way. I would never hear that from a physician. Normally it would be like, well, I'm not qualified to say that, or that, I'm just here, your doctor.
Yes.
So I wanted to kind of praise you on that. You talked about dopamine, which is obviously a happy hormone. You've got endorphins. How can we counteract some of the stress hormones or high levels of stress in our bodies with the happy hormones? What's the best way to absorb that? Are there any specific nutrients or any specific habits or exercises that you'd recommend?
So there is a component that I do with our patients that's a little bit different. we've created what I call the VIP filter, and it stands for values, impact, and protect. And what it is, it's understanding what's important to you and why. It's then knowing, what do I want to make an impact? And like, I'm doing this, but what am I going for? Why am I doing this? And then it's, how do I protect and intentionally prioritize the things I need to make the outcomes happen that I will value? And when it comes to dopamine, what I think is fascinating about the brain, every decision you make, let's say you have the decision to go to work or to do, I don't know, cocaine, right? Like two very different things. Your brain is going to prioritize whatever dopamine is better. And that is why, whether it's sugar, whether it is illicit substances, whether it's alcohol, whether it's risky behaviors, people do them because they feel good, right? You wouldn't do it if it didn't feel good. And so we have to start acknowledging and just in that moment saying, I'm doing this because I need dopamine. So after I come home and the 5 kids are in bed and I'm doing my charts, like if I'm opening the refrigerator, the question is, why is my brain seeking dopamine? Like, what am I needing right now? And then just recognizing, you're aware, okay, I need dopamine. Now, what am I going to do? I get to choose to eat. I get to choose to go for a walk. I get to choose to go to bed. I get to choose to watch a show on Netflix, whatever it is, but giving yourself permission to choose something different and being intentional in that moment, big impact. And if you can improve that just 1% every day, by the end of the year of doing it, it's going to be nearly 40% better. That's a massive impact when it comes to health. If your business, you could do one thing and make 1% improvement every day and have a 40% return on investment higher than what you're dealing with now, why wouldn't you do it? That's a big impact.
Absolutely. Love that. Just again, kind of wrapping up today's session, if there was like, with our listeners specifically, if there's one micro habit that you could offer to one of our listeners, or something that's going to give them the highest amount of yields, that's going to maximize their energy and their metabolic reversal, what would it be? Is there anything that kind of splits the mind?
So I'm actually going to give you 3 ideas, and I would say pick one.
Okay.
The first thing, we didn't talk a lot about this, but there's a amazing wealth of evidence coming out that strength training is important and that we lose a lot of strength as we age. And then there's medicines we take that amplify that effect. But strength training, most people are not getting 2 hours a week of strength training. Many of the things you can do for strength training also relieve stress and improve sleep and may even impact your weight, right? So metabolic health depends on good muscular health. So strength training, vital, 2 hours a week. That's option 1. Option 2 is to prioritize sleep and to start paying attention to, am I waking up in the middle of the night? If I am waking up in the middle of the night, what is waking me up? Is it my full bladder? Is it my dog barking? Is it my spouse snoring, my kids? Or is it the fact that I'm thinking about everything I have to do on my list and that my brain is just going? And if that's what's happening, start fixing it. So that's option 2.
Love that.
Option 3 is walk or do some type of activity that moves your thigh muscles for 10 minutes after you eat, every time you eat. The more you get in the habit of doing that, the more you reflect the biology our ancestors give us. So I would say of those 3 things, those would be what I would target. Yes, you should stop smoking if you're smoking. Yes, you should not overdrink, right? Like there's so many you can pick from. But if I have to pick 3 and I'm only going to do that, then one of those 3 would be where I'd prioritize my time.
Love it.
And I say that as a mom of 5 with a 6-month-old baby and a business. So if I could do this, you can too.
You've got no excuses, ladies
That's
and
right.
gents.
I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, no excuses. It doesn't matter if you're in January or in the summer, okay?
That's right.
So that's the beauty about it. Listen, Amy, this has been a great episode. First of all, thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun, hasn't it?
It has. I'm glad we were able to connect.
Definitely. For you guys that are listening in, by the way, I know that this is a particular topic that is extremely not just sensitive, but I feel like sometimes it gets kind of, should we say, swept under the carpet a lot of the time. And what is your wealth without health at the end of the day? So it's food for thought. And I feel like for some of you guys that are listening in right now that maybe have been on the verge of burnout or have been in fight or flight response due to the previous year or whatever it might be, whatever you are health wise, hopefully this episode will give you some useful insight, some tips and advice that Amy has given you. What I would highly recommend you do is feel free to reach out to her over on social media. As of course, click on any of the links in the show description notes, which are below. And anyway, from me and Amy, thank you so much for listening in. Hopefully we'll see you again on The Business Strategist. Take care. Speak to you soon. Cheers.